So the purpose of today's video is to touch on what are the categories that I'm selling and what does the data tell about those, but also we're going to touch on and ask the big question about, does the 80-20 rule apply to eBay, or in this case to my eBay store? So let's find out. Welcome back to the channel, guys. My name is CLFurlong, and if you are new here, we're all about running, reselling, lifestyle, and everything in between. And today we are doing another episode of What Does the Data Say? Now, the whole point of these videos is to basically leverage the data from my eBay store for the last 6+ months to see if it can tell us a story and reveal anything that maybe I can make an action and decision from, or maybe you could do the same with your own data, your own eBay store, and find something of a change or something of value that you can better your eBay store, or maybe even better your sales. So let's get into it. A quick disclaimer is, obviously this is my eBay store, this is my data, and this applies to my store. Now, it won't be exactly the same for you. However, if you take a look at this, understand the same principles, understand the approach that I'm taking, maybe you can apply it to yours, and maybe you can get some similar results or find some different results, or maybe it will just give you a fresh perspective on how you can approach your sales. So what are the categories that I'm selling and what does the data tell about those? But also we're going to touch on and ask the big question about, does the 80-20 rule apply to eBay, or in this case to my eBay store? So let's find out. Now, the whole idea of this is to obviously have the full intent to see if it makes sense to maybe niche down or maybe focus on some categories or some different types of items that I'm selling, or should it just mean that I just keep the ball rolling? At the time of this video, I've done 31.5 weeks of reselling. I've sold 740 items. I've done $25,811 in revenue, $13,137 in profits. You can see the costs there on screen. And I've basically been dabbling across 12 categories of items or types of items. So here are all the categories or all the types of items that I'm selling for the last 31.5 weeks. As you can see here up on screen, we've got a range of different things. We've got things all the way from art all the way up to DVDs and videos. And you can see the quantities, you can see the revenue, profits, margins, and then of course the percentage of those across the totals. So there is quite a lot of things happening here. I have dabbled in quite a broad range of different items, and of course there's probably subcategories behind all this, but I've tried to bring it together of what makes sense the best. And obviously the top ones being DVDs, books, toys, clothes, and you can see as we continue to scroll back up. Alright, so now that you know of the items that I'm selling, the data behind it, and you can see margins, you can see where things are kind of working better and where things maybe aren't going as well, we're going to ask the question about the 80-20 rule. Now, if you are new to this, if you haven't heard of the 80-20 rule, this is the Pareto principle, and essentially the rule suggests that 20% of your activities will account for 80% of your results. Traditional businesses would then think that 20% of your customers will account for 80% of your sales. So in theory, with an online business, aka maybe eBay, 20% of the products should account for 80% of the revenue, and that's what we're going to dive into today. Does this apply to my store, and does it even apply for eBay? And obviously, once again, disclaimer, this is my store. It's not going to be exactly the same for everyone, but the idea is that you can go through a similar approach to understand, does this apply for you, or is there a way that you can reapply your attention, your focus to see if you can get some better results? So let's dive into it. So if we're having a look at my store, if we're having a look at all the items that I've sold, you can see here clearly that there's no real outliers. You know, there's the top 3 items at the bottom there. We've got toys, books, and DVDs, which is somewhat actually suggesting where the potential, where all my sales are coming from, where all my revenues coming from, and where all my profits coming from. Of course, if we apply the 80-20 rule, there's actually no 20% driving 80% of the results. However, we are finding that 80% of the sales are coming from 40% of the item categories. As you can see here, the clothes, videos, DVDs, toys, and books are driving 80% of my sales. And actually, it's also driving the revenue and the profits as well, almost on par. And obviously that's because of my margins and the quantities that I'm selling compared to the rest of the items. So there is a bit of a caveat there, but it is very interesting to see that there's no real outlier. If you compare the clothes to the books, that's a huge outlier. But in terms of total sales, total revenue, and total profits, it's all coming from basically 40% of the items that I'm selling in terms of categories. So if we take a deeper dive and focus only on the outliers, on the ones which are potentially, sticking out, and removing the ones which were kind of the one-offs. So if we focus down onto potentially the ones that are, driving greater than $1,000 in revenue, well, we're basically left with these 7 different categories. We've got bric-a-brac, which is kind of like your glass and mugs. You've got collectibles, video games, clothes, toys, books, and DVDs and videos, or mainly just DVDs. So we're left with about 707 items, and you can see the revenue and profits there on screen. So now when we apply this same analysis, if this was the only items in my store, once again, very interesting. Roughly 80% of the revenue is coming from those 4 types, and that being 57% of those categories, all those types. So once again, there's no real outlier, but it's very interesting to see that, I have 3 items which are driving 20% of sales, revenue, profit across the store, which is actually a really good thing, because yes, it'd be nice to know that, 80% is coming from 20%, so I could niche down and really focus and make sure I'm spending the time on that. But here I can see that I've actually got 3 items, and then there's the 4th one that's circled of clothes, but the 3 items of around 20%, toys, books, DVDs, and videos, that means if one actually dips down, I still have the others kind of bringing in quite a large, substantial amount of sales, revenue, profits to the store, which is really, really good. There's that saying around, don't keep all your eggs in one basket. Was this intentional? No, I've just been dabbling across multiple different items, and this is what's just been working out for me. So as I said, this is the same for profits too. You can see very, very similar, almost like for like ratios. So once again, let's dive a little deeper. Let's jump into the books, the toys, the DVDs. And now this analysis is not including August, because since we are halfway through August at the point of this video, then it doesn't make sense to include. So we're going to jump straight into books. Now, as you can see on screen here, I've got from January to July how we've been progressing. And, obviously we've been climbing up, more sales, more revenue. There's been a bit of a spike here and there with the revenue, and the profits have continued to, trending upwards. So if we actually use the same data, forecast out what's going to be happening, it's actually suggesting that August, September, October is going to continue to build this way. And the reason why I want to show this is to show that, once again, if one of these categories disappeared, what am I potentially missing out? And also to weigh up around that debate of, is it going to make sense to continue just focusing on this, or should I remove the others, or should I continue doing everything? And that's all part of the story. So here we can see that it's going to continue to trend up, right? And I think once you get enough data and you pull this information, you can do the similar to see if you continue with your focus on these categories, doing the same, understanding your price points and things like that. Well, then you can start to see the potential opportunity. Same for toys. Toys have been gradually going up and up and up. And as you can see here, the revenue is going up as well. And the profits haven't really bounced too high, but the revenue is actually going up because obviously I'm selling more. Once again, if we put the forecast into play, you can see here that it is going up. Things are all pointing in the right direction. And this speaks wonders to me. It's good to be able to see that this is a place where maybe I should be focusing more time, or continuing to focus my time. DVDs, another great one. And I know there's been a big hype on DVDs at this point, buying bulk deals, people trying to pick them up for real cheap. Well, it works, it really does. And as you can see here, I've kind of gone for a bit of a roller coaster in terms of over the months of the quantity sold, but the revenue has also been following the amount that I've been selling, obviously. And then the profits also too, which is very interesting because there's not necessarily high profits in this. It also depends on the bulk deals that you're getting. But this one, it's still continuing to show up. It still is paying quite well. Once again, if we forecast out August, September, October, there is a bit of a slow trend going up, but it's still suggesting it's well worth dabbling in. The big question, thinking about seeing that data, seeing what I'm actually doing, and probably a lot of us are asking, should I be going niche? Should I be focusing on items, or should I be dabbling across multiple different items? Now, if you know me, I have been sharing across the last few weeks that, I do like to dabble in everything. I like to have a little bit of things coming through, whether it's bread and butter items, some of the big ticket items, and then the stuff that I know that's just going to continue to tick over. And I think one thing that I haven't included in this analysis is the factor of time spent, right? And that's very clear. The time it's going to take you to list a book or a DVD or even toys is going to be different of clothes. It's going to be different of doing electronics or very big hard item goods, or it's going to be different for how I enjoy them, which means my workflow, my process, how efficient I am. So that's one thing we need to take into account when looking at this. However, I still think there's a very strong case that if I leverage the time spent on items listing and the return I get from them, it does show clearly that the items greater than $1,000 in revenue, if I actually divided these by the 31 weeks of reselling, it's going to show me how likely I'm going to continue to get those sales as I progress through. And obviously this is looking at past data, so it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be exact for the forecast, but it does look very, very encouraging. As you can see here, bric-a-brac, collectibles, video games, clothes, toys, books, and DVDs, they're all averaging anywhere between 1.5 to up to 5.6 sales per week if I continue to do these. Now, I've been trying to do 15 listings per day. Some days I'm just doing books, some days I'm just doing DVDs, some days I'm just doing a whole lot of random different stuff. So if I continue to put these in, it's basically going to mean I'm going to have up to 20 items selling through the week of these 7 different categories, which is really, really good, because once again, if I had all of them DVDs, yes, maybe I'll be listing more DVDs, but I'm still potentially only going to increase sales a little bit. It's very interesting to take this all into mind. However, I want to be very clear that the other factors that I have not considered and that you need to consider is the items that you're sourcing. I mean, of course, if you're only sourcing DVDs, books, toys, clothes, that's what you're going to sell. That's where your revenue is going to come from. However, I am sourcing everything when I get the chance to, which is why you're seeing the data of a spread, not necessarily even, but a great spread across the store in the different categories and the numbers that we're seeing. The other thing that I haven't considered here is cycle time of those things selling through and how quick they're selling through. Now, on average, my items take about 32 to 33 days to sell, which means that things that I'm listing today, I'm not going to get for another month. So that does have a part to play here and to consider when looking at what is bringing in the most results. Because once again, if you are selling DVDs versus if you're selling collectibles, the DVDs might sell a lot quicker than those collectibles because more people are wanting to buy the DVDs, less people are buying those collectibles. However, you might get a higher price point. Coming back to the big question, doesn't mean I should niche down, doesn't mean that I should actually continue to focus on the broader categories. Well, my answer to this is actually, I think it's great to have a broad range of items on your store. And the reason why I say that is it comes back to one of the first points that I mentioned is, my top categories across the 40% of my item categories, in this case, the 5 categories or the 5 top categories, 3 of those are driving 20% of everything into my store, sales, revenue, and profits. Which means if one of them dips down, I'm still managing to fill those gaps with the other items, that are building up 2%, 6%, 5%, and I'm not going to necessarily have a huge hit. If one of these categories was actually driving 80% of my sales, my revenue and profits, and that was the dip, then I would be in a sticky situation. Now, on the contrary, it's quite interesting to see this because I had never planned for this. Obviously, it all has a part to play with the margins and how I'm operating from a bottom line as well to enable me to keep the sales, revenue, and profits pretty consistent. But I think it's important to understand that this won't work for everyone, right? You're not going to be able to source exactly the same things as me. You're not going to be able to source the quantity. However, I think if you have your 2 to 3 categories, which are going to be your go-to, the things that you love to do, those are the things, yes, you should focus majority of your time on. Those are the things that are going to show up, get you the results, get you the income, get you the consistency, because that's what you want. You want to know that you are going to have those dollars trickling through each week or each month or however often that you are doing this. On the side, to have those additional things coming through, you're listing them here and there, you will get the bigger sales potentially. They're likely to have the higher sales price too, potentially. Or maybe not. So that's when you probably want to start weighing up, well, what is the average sale price of these items that you're selling versus the quantity as well? Because you might be selling 180 books, but it might only be bringing in $6,000. Whereas if you sell 20 other things and it brings in $6,000, well, obviously that's going to be a lot better, but that is not very clear here. And that's why I think, based on this data, I'm going to continue to have this broad range of items. Yes, focusing on my top 3-4 items of categories as the majority of that's going into my store. But as other things come up, as other opportunities, as good bargains, as good deals come up, I will continue to purchase and source those and put them into the store because it does help build over time. What will be interesting is to see how this expands, how this grows over the next 6 months. Will it change? Will it be different? I know I've been spending a lot of time on DVDs, toys and books in the last month or so, which is why we are seeing the numbers we're seeing. But if I was to just stop those and just sell shoes, would we have the same result? Would we have the results I'm trying to look for of, would that be driving 80% of my revenue? Potentially not, because once again, it comes down to what people are buying, the quantity, the quality, there's so many factors, but this is what is being revealed for my store. Now, I think one more thing that I kind of wanted to mention was, if we do focus on books, toys, and DVDs, is what are the average price points coming through at these? So if we look at books, the average sale is $34, and that's across obviously from January to August. And if you look at profits, it's 50%, right? So the average profit that I'm getting per book is $16. Once again, this is across since January all the way up until the middle of August. And average cost of goods being $5.84. If we look at toys, very similar. $34 is the average sold price. Average profit being $17.38, and then purchase price being $4.84. For DVDs, now this one is actually an outlier. DVDs, the average, and this is once again across January to August, the average has been $43.56, profit being $20.99, and cost of goods being $9.69. So higher price point, however, the average being sold in terms of revenue and profit is marginally higher, which is actually something very interesting to think about. So that's it, team. I really do appreciate you being here. Now, I want to ask you, was this relevant for you? Did this help you? Is this of interest to you? I think the key message here that I'm trying to help people understand is that look at your data, understand what is it telling you. Is there something here which is suggesting maybe if you did put your focus elsewhere, you could probably potentially expand or grow your results. At the same time, it might also reveal to you maybe that isn't the right decision to make. Maybe that isn't going to work for you. There is a lot of things on the internet. There's a lot of things people showing that you should do this, you shouldn't do that. Look, I'm here telling you maybe you should do this, maybe you shouldn't do that. But the whole idea of this is, one, well, I'm going through my own data. I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm understanding it, but I'm sharing it with you at the same time. So maybe there is something here. And of course, if you've got some questions, if you've got some comments, difference of opinions, maybe you thought this wasn't relevant, do let me know. Of course, if you think something here was of value or something did stick out for you, or if you're curious, let me know in the comments below. More than happy to have a follow-up conversation and see if I can help you understand this better. Now, all this data has come from my own tracking sheet. There is a tracker sheet template that I have. I'm going to put that down in the template below. It doesn't cover all these items, but what I suggest if you are wanting to track data is understand what you want to track and start tracking it yourself, and understand small amounts of data at a time, so then you can build and expand. Not everything is needed for everyone at the same time. I think starting small, of knowing what your costs are, what's your revenue, what's your profit, and all those things, that's just the bare bones, that's the bare basics. And there's a few other things there as well. You can check out my sales tracker, and there is a video as well, so maybe that will help you. Anyway, really do appreciate you being here. Of course, if you do have a question, do make sure you ask it in the comments below. Otherwise, make sure you like, subscribe, comment, do the whole shebang, and hustle. Ciao.